Have you ever wondered what it's like to witness the quiet ache behind someone's eyes? Especially when those eyes belong to Severus Snape, lurking in the dim corridors of Hogwarts, moving with the precise grace of a man who measures every step, yet somehow betrays a heartbeat you can almost hear if you lean close enough. Tonight, the castle is unusually silent, save for the occasional drip of water from the stone archways and the faint scuff of your own shoes against the worn flagstones. And as you trudge past the portraits that murmur half-forgotten gossip, you notice him, a flash of black robes, a tilt of his head, and a gaze that flickers away just as quickly, like a candle caught in a draft. You probably won't survive this moment unflustered. There's a tension in the air that's almost tangible, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your skin tingle, but there's also something oddly comforting in knowing that even the most reserved potions master is subject to the strange, human pangs of affection. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. The cold stone beneath your fingertips contrasts with the warmth you imagine in him, and you catch yourself wondering what secrets he's hiding, what memories cling to his shadowed heart, and whether any of them involve the girl or person who lingers unknowingly in the periphery of his carefully curated solitude. There's a historical fact tucked in here too. Even in the 20th century, headmasters and professors often maintained intensely private lives, shrouded in both propriety and rumor, which makes Hogwarts' own secretive corridors feel eerily accurate. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars debate whether Snape's penchant for solitude was entirely personality-driven or magically influenced by lingering potion residues from his youth. An open question that leaves room for interpretation and speculation. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The potions classroom smells faintly of burnt sugar, sulfur, and a hint of peppermint. And as you slip inside, the flickering candlelight casts long, wavering shadows along the walls, making each shelf of glass bottles and ancient ingredients feel like it's holding secrets of its own. Severus Snape is already there, his posture rigid, yet his eyes betray something softer, something that doesn't belong to the stoic, calculating professor everyone else believes him to be. You notice the way his fingers hover slightly too long over the vial of powdered bicorn horn, as if reluctant to touch it, and you realize these small hesitations are the windows into a side of him few ever see, the weight of unspoken feelings, the careful guarding of a heart that has learned to survive in silence. You move closer, your footsteps muffled against the worn stone, and there's a magnetic pull, subtle but undeniable, drawing you into the quiet intimacy of this shared, suspended moment. You mix a potion under his watchful eye, and the steam curling from the cauldron seems to dance with your unasked questions, filling the room with an almost tactile anticipation. He speaks softly, though not to you, yet the sound of his voice seems to ripple through the air, wrapping around your ears and settling in your chest like a warm, forbidden spell. Historical fact: potion making in wizarding schools has always been as much about precision as it has been about patience and understanding, a practice dating back centuries. Yet it's easy to forget that even the most serious of wizards occasionally falter under emotional strain, a reality that makes your current observation remarkably human. There's also a quirky, fringe tidbit. Some historians of magical lore suggest that Snape's particular attention to brewing nuances may have been influenced by an obscure family charm designed to heighten emotional sensitivity, though scholarly debate continues fiercely on whether this is true or merely romanticized speculation. the room feels smaller somehow, as if the boundaries of time and propriety have softened, and you wonder if anyone else has ever noticed this fragile vulnerability, or if you are alone in witnessing a side of him that exists only in these quiet, candlelit intervals, a secret kept between shadow, potion, and heart. Rain pelts against the astronomy tower with a relentless rhythm, each drop drumming on the stone like a conductor's baton, and you trudge up the winding staircase, your robes soaked and clinging, the cold biting at your fingers, while the wind tangles your hair in a chaotic, almost mischievous manner that somehow makes the entire scene feel cinematic. At the top, the view stretches into a gray blur, the Hogwarts grounds slick and glistening beneath the stormy clouds. And there he is, Severus Snape, leaning against the railing, black robes whipped around him, hair plastered to his forehead, yet standing with that same unshakable poise, eyes distant but intense. You approach cautiously, noticing the subtle twitch of his lips as if he's fighting a secret amusement. And there's a thrill in that moment, the kind that makes your heart tighten not from fear, but from the precarious intimacy of shared space under a tempest. He turns, and for a fleeting instant, you see vulnerability and longing collide in his gaze, a storm within a storm, reflecting the tempest around you, and you find yourself speaking without thinking, your words blending with the rain. You ever wonder if the stars are watching us, or just mocking our human melodrama? He doesn't answer, or rather, he answers with a slight incline of his head, the ghost of a smirk brushing his expression, and you feel the electric tension of unsaid truths vibrating in the cold night air. There's a historical fact to anchor the moment. Towers and high vantage points have long served as both observatories and clandestine meeting places in magical education, offering students, and apparently professors, a secretive space where privacy and reflection intersect. Yet the fringe tidbit is that some astrologers of the wizarding world believed that storm clouds could carry emotions, a curious notion that remains debated in scholarly circles and certainly adds a poetic layer to the tempest enveloping you both. You watch the rain sliding down the stone parapets, reflecting pinpricks of lightning, and for the first time, feel that the rigid boundaries of the castle, its rules, and even Snape's own defenses might soften, if only slightly, under this shared spectacle, a night where magic, melancholy, and unspoken affection intertwine, leaving you suspended in an exquisite, impossible tension that is as thrilling as it is fleeting. The library smells of aged parchment, dust, and a faint hint of dragonhide bindings, a combination that is strangely comforting as you push open the tall oak doors and step into the hush of whispered knowledge, each footstep muffled against the thick carpet, each breath echoing softly between towering shelves that seem to lean toward you conspiratorially. Here, in a secret alcove hidden behind a rotating shelf of obscure texts on defensive enchantments, you find Severus Snape already waiting, his posture impossibly straight, yet the slight curve of his shoulders betrays a tension you can't quite name, a vulnerability that seems reserved for these quiet moments between ancient tomes. As you approach, the flickering lamplight catches in his eyes, and for a heartbeat, you see something you're not supposed to see. A soft, almost hesitant warmth, an affection carefully veiled by decades of discipline and shadow. He reaches for a particularly dusty volume on the history of magical dueling, and your hands brush briefly, a spark that seems almost electrical in its subtle insistence, making you acutely aware of the delicate intimacy the library affords. A stolen world where neither student nor professor exists beyond this shared corner of secrecy. Historical fact: medieval libraries, both magical and muggle, often contained hidden alcoves for clandestine reading, which allowed scholars and apprentices to interact with texts, and sometimes each other, without oversight. A fringe tidbit adds that Hogwarts' very architecture was rumored to incorporate magical conduits that amplified whispered conversations, a point still debated by modern historians of magical architecture. You settle on the floor across from him, the scent of parchment mingling with the subtle aroma of his cloak, and he begins to speak in his low, measured voice, offering comments on obscure spells, anecdotes about potion failures, and unbidden moments of personal reflection that slip between his careful words like sunlight through stained glass. You listen, mesmerized, feeling the room shrink around you, the outside world and its rules dissipating, until only this alcove, the flickering light, and the fragile, nearly imperceptible pulse of shared connection exist. A quiet testament to the possibility of tenderness in a place built for logic, rigor, and secrecy, leaving you suspended in an exquisite mixture of awe, curiosity, and that peculiar thrill reserved for moments of unguarded revelation. The cauldron before you bubbles gently, a swirling mixture of emerald green liquid and silver sparks that leap and dance as if impatient to reveal some hidden truth, and you stand alongside Severus Snape, noting the precision with which he measures each ingredient, the deliberate flick of his wrist, and the subtle inhale of his breath that seems to synchronize with the rise and fall of the potion itself. The classroom is silent except for the occasional hiss and pop of alchemical reaction. Yet within this quiet, there is a pulse, a rhythm that resonates between you and him, a tacit understanding that this shared work is about more than mere potions. It is an exchange of trust, a fragile bridge between a heart long hidden and the one that dares to notice it. As you stir, careful not to spill the delicate concoction, you notice his gaze lingering longer than professional propriety should allow, the slightest narrowing of his eyes conveying scrutiny that borders on amusement, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile tugs at the corner of his lips, fleeting but undeniable, revealing the human beneath the severe exterior. The warmth of the cauldron spreads slowly, an echo of the warmth that seems to gather between the two of you, filling the room with an intimacy that is as electric as it is forbidden. A quiet acknowledgement that affection can thrive in the shadows of ritual and restraint. Historical fact: potion brewing classes have always been central to wizarding education, teaching not only technical skill, but also patience, focus, and emotional control. Yet the nuances of interpersonal dynamics often go unrecorded in official texts, leaving room for speculation. A quirky tidbit notes that some scholars argue Snape's meticulous attention to ingredients may have been a sublimated expression of longing and care, a claim still debated within magical pedagogical circles. The clinking of glass vials punctuates your conversation as you exchange observations, his tone dipping into stories of past mistakes, each anecdote layered with self-deprecating humor. And you realize that even in the art of concocting liquids and powders, there is poetry, a metaphor for hearts that must be combined with care, stirred gently, and allowed to react without force. As the potion reaches its intended hue, a shimmering green that seems to catch the light from the floating candles in unexpected ways, he finally looks at you directly, eyes locking with yours, and the silence stretches taut, filled with questions that neither of you dare to voice aloud. A communion of shared vulnerability and subtle courage, where magic and emotion intermingle in ways the textbooks never accounted for, leaving you acutely aware that the most powerful spells are often those that touch the heart, not merely the cauldron, and that love, though unspoken, can be as potent and transformative as the rarest potion, a slow-burning force that reshapes everything it touches, lingering long after the last ember of candlelight fades, and leaving you suspended between awe, nervous excitement, and the quiet realization that some confessions, however indirect, are more potent than any verbal admission. The night is unusually still, the castle settling into a near-perfect silence, except for the occasional creak of stone and the distant drip of water from the roof. And you find yourself swept into a scenario that feels more like enchantment than reality. A magically induced duel, conjured for practice, yet charged with tension that extends beyond mere spells and hexes, as if the magic itself is aware of the unspoken emotions hovering between you and Severus Snape, eager to test not only skill, but restraint, courage, and honesty. You stand across from him, wand raised, and the faint hum of power in the air seems to pulse in time with your racing heart. Each movement deliberate, measured, a dance of precision that mirrors the careful management of feelings neither of you is ready to name. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, hold a strange softness tonight, betraying the careful facade of the stern potions master. And with each exchanged spell, there is a subtle dialogue, a conversation conducted entirely through movement, glance, and breath, where even a deflection or misstep carries unspoken weight. The clash of magic acting as both barrier and bridge. You dodge a harmless but dazzling jet of sparks, feeling the rush of adrenaline and the thrill of proximity. The cold air punctuated by the warmth radiating from his presence. And in that tension-laden atmosphere, you almost forget the duel is a practice, not a confession. Yet every flick of the wand and every whispered incantation seems imbued with layers of intent that transcend instruction, hinting at vulnerability and trust hidden beneath decades of discipline. Historical fact: dueling practice has been a cornerstone of magical education for centuries, designed not only to teach defensive skill, but also to cultivate mental focus and self-control. Yet a fringe tidbit notes that some wizards have historically reported heightened emotional sensitivity during dueling, a phenomenon still debated among magical psychologists, suggesting that spells may resonate with feelings as much as intention. You notice how carefully he times his movements, never striking too hard, never leaving you exposed, and the realization settles quietly that he is as much aware of your heart as he is of your wand, a subtle synchronization of body, mind, and emotion that is remarkable for someone so reserved. As the duel concludes with a flourish of sparks and a mutual, almost imperceptible nod, the charged energy between you does not dissipate. Instead, it lingers, a tangible current of shared experience and restrained longing, leaving you both breathless, aware that in these moments of orchestrated conflict, truth has a way of surfacing through motion, that intimacy can manifest in even the most controlled, disciplined forms, and that love, though unspoken, can reveal itself in the cadence of steps, the arc of spells, and the quiet acknowledgement that some connections, once felt, cannot easily be ignored, even by a master of occlumency who has spent a lifetime guarding every secret of the heart. The folded parchment lies before you on the polished wooden desk, its edges slightly curled from the humidity of the potions classroom, and you can almost feel the weight of the words it contains, heavier than any textbook or incantation, a tangible manifestation of a heart long shackled by duty, pride, and fear. Severus Snape stands silently nearby, the faint candlelight glinting off the rim of his glasses. The shadow of his sharp features softened in ways you've never seen, and for a moment, it feels as though the entire castle has paused, holding its breath along with you. The ink is still wet, the scent of the quill and parchment mingling with the faint aroma of powdered unicorn horn and the underlying musk of his cloak, creating an atmosphere that is simultaneously ordinary and profoundly intimate. You reach for the letter with care, aware that it represents something far more fragile than paper and ink, a confession, a vulnerability, and a trust that has never been offered to anyone, perhaps ever. As you unfold it, the cursive writing seems to shift in the flickering light, the words curling around each other in ways that suggest hesitation, longing, and a meticulous care that only someone like Snape could produce. There are lines of poetry interspersed with mundane observations, each one layered with dual meanings that might reveal affection or simply the shadow of memory. And you realize that every word is both a shield and a key, a paradox that mirrors the man who wrote it, a master of occlusion, concealment, and subtle revelation. Historical fact: in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, personal correspondence among wizards was often coded with subtle magical charms, both to preserve privacy and to convey emotions that were difficult to speak aloud. Some scholars suggest that this practice contributed to the complexity of interpreting historical texts, a point still debated in magical academia. The quirky tidbit here is that some of Snape's younger colleagues have rumored that he once practiced potion making, not just for alchemy, but as a means of exploring emotional expression, a method thought lost and largely anecdotal, yet tantalizing in its suggestion that magic and sentiment can be inseparable. You read the first few sentences and feel your pulse quicken, the words echoing in your mind long after the ink has settled. Confessions of loneliness, glimpses of admiration, and the faint, aching acknowledgement of affection so carefully hidden it almost becomes invisible. There are references to shared classes, fleeting interactions, and moments where a glance or an offhand comment seemed laden with meaning. And suddenly, you understand that these small, nearly imperceptible instances have been meticulously recorded in the language of the heart, transformed into script as a safe harbor for vulnerability. You glance at Snape, and his eyes, dark and intense, meet yours for the briefest moment, a silent inquiry as to whether you understand, whether you see beyond the formality and the layers of discipline into the raw emotion that he has cloaked in ink and quill. The sensation is electric, a shiver running down your spine as the realization settles that love, even unspoken and unseen by the world, can exist in pure, potent isolation, a force that shapes actions, choices, and destinies without fanfare or recognition. You linger over the letter, memorizing phrases, the curl of certain letters, the rhythm of his handwriting, each stroke a heartbeat, each pause a breath held in anticipation. And in that careful reading, you feel a closeness that is both exhilarating and terrifying, a proximity to the human essence of a man whose reputation has long been defined by severity, secrecy, and an unyielding adherence to principle. Fringe scholars argue that magical intent can imprint on parchment itself, that a particularly heartfelt message can retain subtle traces of emotion that resonate with the reader, a theory that remains debated but seems undeniably plausible as you feel a warmth, a pulse, almost a whisper from the words themselves that cannot be explained by mundane means. Hours pass unnoticed as you trace sentences and lines, piecing together glimpses of a life lived behind a curtain of control, the mundane and the extraordinary intertwining to reveal a love carefully guarded, yet incapable of complete suppression. You consider the paradox: a man so proficient in shielding himself from external observation, who yet cannot shield the truth of his feelings from ink and quill. And it dawns on you that these unspoken truths, these fragile, potent confessions, carry a power beyond any spell or enchantment, a power that resides not in the casting of magic, but in the vulnerability of the human heart. As the candlelight flickers low, shadows stretching long across the desk, you feel the weight of history, the peculiarity of Hogwarts walls that have witnessed untold confessions, whispered spells, and fleeting moments of courage. And you understand that this letter is not merely communication. It is a bridge across years of isolation, a delicate thread connecting two souls in the stillness of shared understanding. You lift your eyes from the parchment to meet Snape's gaze, and the silence is thick, pregnant with meaning, a conversation that transcends words, a mutual acknowledgement of feelings that are impossible to name aloud, yet undeniable in their presence. The moment stretches. The outside world, the castle, even the passage of time itself seems suspended, allowing this rare glimpse into the interior life of one of Hogwarts' most enigmatic figures. And you realize that in this careful, trembling revelation, love has found a way to exist without declaration, to imprint itself indelibly upon hearts and minds, to become an enduring echo that survives in memory, thought, and ink. You place the letter back on the desk reverently, feeling both a pang of loss and a sense of awe, aware that you have been entrusted with a secret that will linger, subtle and profound, in the quiet chambers of your mind, a testament to the enduring power of hidden affection, the beauty of restraint, and the extraordinary intimacy of being allowed to witness the soul behind the mask. The astronomy tower rises above the castle like a sentinel, its stones slick from the evening drizzle and slick with the reflection of moonlight that pierces the clouds in fragmented beams. And you climb the narrow spiral staircase with the same care you would take handling a fragile relic, your breaths shallow, heart thrumming in anticipation of a reunion you cannot quite name. Severus Snape is there already, leaning slightly against the cold stone parapet, robes damp and pressed close to his frame by the wind, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes fixed on the distant horizon where the silvered outline of the forbidden forest meets the storm-tossed sky. The wind carries with it the scent of rain-soaked pine, a hint of ozone, and the faint metallic tang of magic lingering from earlier lessons, mingling with the subtle musk of Snape's cloak, creating an intoxicating, almost dizzying melange of sensations that pulls you closer, even as caution tugs at your mind. You step beside him, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of quiet between you, the air thick with unspoken words, a liminal space suspended between night and knowledge, between secrecy and revelation, a place where confessions might drift into existence like mist curling across the tower's battlements. He does not speak immediately, but you feel the subtle tension in his stance, the imperceptible twitch of a shoulder, the slight narrowing of his eyes as if measuring the very atmosphere for threats, whether magical or emotional. And in that deliberate silence, the storm outside seems to mirror the storm within, a reflection of years of restraint, pain, and carefully hidden yearning, the tumult of suppressed desire made visible in the glint of moonlight on his eyes. Historical fact: astronomy towers were traditionally used in wizarding schools not only for celestial observation, but also as sites for private reflection, dueling practice, and discreet meetings, offering both vantage and privacy. Yet a quirky tidbit survives in the footnotes of an obscure magical history tome, claiming that certain high towers at Hogwarts were reputed to amplify the emotional resonance of those who lingered within them, a phenomenon still subject to debate among magical psychologists and historians. You speak first, your words tentative. Do you ever wonder if we are alone up here, or if the stars themselves are listening? And he turns slightly, his dark gaze meeting yours with a quiet intensity that makes the hairs on your arms rise. His voice, low and measured, carries a weight that seems to bend the night around you. The stars are indifferent, but occasionally they might pretend to notice. There's a faint, almost imperceptible humor in the cadence, a fleeting glimpse of the man behind the mask, and it strikes you how carefully he balances the line between vulnerability and control, allowing fragments of truth to slip through while maintaining an ironclad composure. You notice the way his hands rest along the stone parapet, fingers flexing subtly, a rhythm you've never observed before, almost like a silent heartbeat. And the realization settles that this moment, this tower, this storm, has created a space in which honesty can exist without threat. A suspended reality where your proximity is not merely tolerated, but perhaps even welcomed in ways words cannot convey. Fringe scholars of magical behavioral studies suggest that extreme elevation combined with natural phenomena, such as storms and moonlight, can heighten emotional perception, making humans and wizards alike more attuned to subtle gestures, whispers, and glances, a theory both contested and fascinating, for it provides a lens through which the charged silence between you now might be scientifically appreciated. You feel the weight of his gaze, the almost imperceptible inclination of his head, as if acknowledging your presence, and the silence stretches, filled not with emptiness, but with the echo of shared experience, with a resonance that vibrates through the stone, through the air, and through the heart, a quiet understanding that some intimacies need no articulation. Words would be inadequate anyway. The night, the storm, the flickering moonlight, and the fragile intimacy of proximity are sufficient to convey thoughts and feelings that might otherwise be impossible to express. A silent symphony of glances, breaths, and the subtle cadence of unspoken understanding. The conversation that begins, when it does, is soft, tentative, and rich with the subtext of years of careful concealment. A verbal dance that mirrors the unspoken dialogue you've shared for so long. Memories of past lessons, fleeting glances in corridors, shared disappointments and triumphs, and the rare moments when the mask faltered and the man beneath revealed his true heart. The wind ruffles your hair and tugs at his robes, a physical reminder of the outside world pressing against this fragile sanctuary. Yet within this bubble, the castle recedes, leaving only the two of you suspended between moonlight and shadow, between hesitation and courage, between longing and the silent acknowledgement that the feelings held here, though complicated and fraught with impossibility, are as real as any spell or incantation. You lean slightly closer to hear his whispered observations about constellations, the subtle inflection in his voice carrying layers of emotion, each sentence a testament to restraint, intelligence, and the occasional, almost imperceptible admission of desire, a blending of historical fact, personal memory, and magical observation that feels both grounding and surreal. The stars pierce the storm-tossed sky like needles of silver, reflecting in his eyes as if to mirror the unspoken truths between you, and you find yourself captivated not by the spectacle alone, but by the profound realization that even in a life so carefully controlled, so dominated by secrecy, moments of genuine connection, however fleeting, are possible, and when they occur, they resonate with a depth that outlasts the storm, outlasts the night, and etches themselves into memory with the permanence of enchantment itself. As the first hints of dawn color the horizon, a soft glow illuminating the tower's slick stones, you recognize the bittersweet nature of the encounter. These moments are temporary, yet indelibly imprinted, an interlude in time that will linger long after the world resumes its routine, a testament to the quiet, persistent power of shared vulnerability, and the extraordinary intimacy that exists when two hearts, long concealed, are allowed to simply exist together in silence, observation, and mutual acknowledgement. A chapter of their lives written not in ink or parchment, but in presence, breath, and the subtle, enduring language of the heart. The potion before you glows with an iridescent shimmer, the liquid swirling in shades of violet and silver that seem almost alive, reflecting the flickering candlelight in the dimly lit potions classroom. And you realize that the act of creating it is more than a mere exercise in magical skill. It is a ritual, a carefully orchestrated dance of ingredients, timing, and intention that mirrors the emotions tangled between you and Severus Snape. Emotions that have long simmered beneath a surface of discipline, secrecy, and meticulously cultivated control. You stand side by side, hands occasionally brushing as you measure powdered moonstone and a pinch of powdered asphodel. The brief contact sending a shiver that is neither entirely from the chill of the room nor from the physical sensation alone, but from the quiet intimacy that has woven itself into every movement, glance, and shared breath. Snape's voice, low and measured, instructs you on the subtle adjustments required to balance the potion, each word precise, yet carrying a cadence that betrays a faint, almost imperceptible warmth, a hidden humor, and the faintest trace of care that reaches beyond the technicalities of alchemy. You notice the subtle tension in his jaw, the micro-expressions that flicker across his features, and the deliberate, almost imperceptible pauses in his speech that create a rhythm like that of a carefully controlled heartbeat, echoing the unspoken communication that passes between you. A silent acknowledgement that some truths are best conveyed through presence rather than words. Historical fact: the creation of rare potions often required not only technical mastery, but also emotional attunement, a principle taught at Hogwarts and other wizarding academies for centuries, though it is rarely codified in standard textbooks, leaving room for interpretation. A quirky tidbit preserved in obscure magical treatises suggests that certain emotionally charged potions could subtly reflect the brewer's sentiments, a phenomenon still hotly debated among potion scholars, providing a tantalizing lens through which to view the current shared experience. You watch the potion's color deepen, shifting like liquid starlight, and it occurs to you that the act of brewing is almost a metaphor for your growing awareness of Snape's feelings and your own responses. Careful, precise, yet unpredictable, requiring attention, patience, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. Each measurement, each stir, each whispered correction from him seems layered with significance beyond the technical, and you sense that the potion itself has become a conduit for trust, a tangible representation of the delicate balance between vulnerability and control, desire and restraint. As the liquid simmers, tiny sparks rising from its surface like flecks of magic dust, you feel the weight of shared history, of moments that have passed unnoticed in corridors, classrooms, and common rooms, each one contributing to the intricate tapestry of connection that now enfolds you both. Quiet and potent, a force that defies simple explanation, yet is undeniable in its presence. The fringe scholarship surrounding emotionally reactive potions suggests that such brews might resonate with subtle emotional frequencies, enhancing empathy between those present, a theory that offers both a rational framework and a poetic lens through which to interpret the deepening awareness and connection unfolding before you. You lean slightly closer to examine the potion, and in doing so, your shoulder brushes his once more, and the proximity sparks a silent acknowledgement, a fleeting pulse of recognition that is both thrilling and terrifying, revealing the unspoken layers of care, longing, and restrained affection that have accumulated over years of careful concealment. He glances at you, eyes dark and searching, and in that moment, there is a profound clarity that love, even when hidden beneath sarcasm, rigid decorum, and decades of secrecy, can assert itself in the subtlest of gestures, in the quiet attentiveness to detail, and the patience required to coax a volatile mixture into harmonious completion. The potion, shimmering and alive, becomes a mirror of the heart, reflecting not only your own awareness of him, but the painstaking effort he has invested in mastering both magic and emotion, a testament to the intersection of skill, intent, and human vulnerability. As the final ingredients are added, and the brew settles into a luminous, stable glow, the room seems to exhale, the tension easing yet leaving a residue of shared awareness. A bond forged not in dramatic declarations, but in the quiet, exacting work of creation, observation, and mutual care. A moment that is as ephemeral as the flicker of candlelight, yet as enduring as the ancient stones of Hogwarts themselves. You step back, observing the potion's completion, and notice the faint curve of his lips, a subtle acknowledgement that perhaps he has allowed himself a small, nearly imperceptible expression of satisfaction, one that speaks volumes without uttering a single word, leaving you suspended between admiration, awe, and a gentle, profound awareness of the depths of feeling that can exist quietly, resiliently, and unexpectedly within a heart long trained to conceal its truths. The atmosphere is thick with possibility, charged yet delicate, a space where magic and emotion intermingle, revealing the extraordinary intimacy that can emerge when two people engage in creation with awareness, respect, and unspoken understanding. A dance as old as Hogwarts itself, a testament to the power of presence, attention, and the subtle, enduring force of hidden affection. The corridors of Hogwarts feel unusually still, the kind of silence that presses softly against your ears, as if the castle itself is leaning in to witness a final, unspoken chapter unfolding between you and Severus Snape. And as you walk beside him, you notice the subtle shift in his gait, the almost imperceptible relaxation of shoulders that are usually rigid, a movement that carries with it a quiet surrender to the inevitability of this fleeting moment of shared acknowledgement. The castle's torches flicker in rhythm with the distant echo of your footsteps, casting elongated shadows that dance across the stone walls, and the air is tinged with the faint aroma of rain lingering from the evening storm outside, mingling with the familiar comforting scent of his cloak. A mixture of lavender, old parchment, and something indefinably personal, a scent that has become as familiar to you as the rhythm of your own heartbeat. You pause at a secluded alcove near the entrance to the dungeons, where the shadows deepen, and the flickering light illuminates a face at once stern and softened by vulnerability. And for a heartbeat, you see the man beneath the mask, a heart capable of great devotion, of unyielding love hidden beneath years of secrecy, isolation, and duty. A love he has nurtured silently, carefully, meticulously. A force as strong and potent as any spell he has ever cast. Historical fact: throughout magical history, many accomplished wizards and witches have concealed emotional lives behind rigorous practice, strict discipline, and deliberate detachment, both as a means of self-protection and as adherence to societal expectation. Yet this very concealment paradoxically amplifies the intensity of their private affections, a principle that finds remarkable resonance in the quiet exchanges you now share. The fringe tidbit, long whispered in obscure wizarding treatises, suggests that Snape's profound attention to the minute, the overlooked, and the seemingly mundane may have been a form of emotional alchemy, channeling suppressed affection into precise, deliberate acts, though scholarly debate remains unresolved, leaving room for interpretation, speculation, and the poetic possibility that love can be transmuted into both potion and gesture. You take a breath, the cool night air mingling with the warmth that radiates from proximity, and the silence stretches taut, charged with unspoken words, a delicate tension where expression is measured in glances, pauses, and the subtle cadence of breath rather than in vocalized confession. He speaks at last, softly, almost hesitantly, a murmur that seems to vibrate in resonance with the stones themselves. Time is never quite kind, is it? And you sense in the careful phrasing an acknowledgement not just of temporal limitations, but of the years of restraint and sacrifice that have defined him, the love he has carried silently, and the rare grace of this moment, where mutual recognition and quiet courage allow it to exist, however briefly. You respond with measured honesty, your own voice reflecting a resonance with his vulnerability, a willingness to honor the connection without overstepping the fragile boundaries of circumstance, and the shared awareness deepens, creating a bond that feels timeless, suspended beyond the march of hours, beyond the reach of prying eyes, a communion that is both ephemeral and indelibly etched into the memory of your hearts. The castle's architecture, the stonework, and the flickering torchlight seem to conspire to provide privacy, framing the moment, as if the building itself acknowledges the rarity and significance of such unspoken truths. You notice how small gestures, a tilt of the head, the faint exhalation through tight lips, the slight inclination toward you, become profound statements in this delicate language of proximity, trust, and silent acknowledgement, a lexicon cultivated over years of shared spaces, subtle interactions, and restrained communication. As the minutes stretch, you realize that this final chapter, though transient, encapsulates the depth of what has been hidden for so long. The resilience of affection in the face of isolation, the courage required to maintain composure while feeling deeply, and the quiet, extraordinary power of being seen, even without words, by someone whose life has been defined by concealment and control. Historical echoes reverberate here, reminding you that countless generations of wizards have experienced such constrained connections, their lives intertwined with secrecy, circumstance, and unspoken emotion. Yet few have left tangible traces of their interior lives, making your awareness of Snape's feelings both rare and precious. The potion of human experience, longing, restraint, affection, and courage, is distilled in this moment, more potent than any elixir or charm, a testament to the enduring capacity of the heart to love, even when constrained by duty, expectation, or fear. As you step back, allowing the moment to recede naturally, the tension eases, leaving in its place a quiet reverence, a sense of completion that does not require finality, a recognition that some connections, though never fully realized or publicly acknowledged, carry a permanence beyond time, memory, or circumstance. The castle resumes its ambient whisper, the corridors once again echoing the distant sounds of life. Yet the imprint of this exchange lingers, subtle but undeniable, a testament to the enduring resonance of affection, the courage to be vulnerable, and the extraordinary intimacy that arises when two people, long bound by secrecy and propriety, allow themselves to exist in mutual acknowledgement, if only for a moment, in the quiet sanctuary of understanding, trust, and unspoken devotion. The wind outside softens, and the first rays of dawn hint at color along the horizon, bathing the tower in pale gold. You feel the lingering warmth of shared presence, the subtle ache of imminent separation, and the quiet reassurance that some truths, though hidden, are eternal, etched into the soul, enduring like magic itself, whispered across corridors, reflected in candlelight, and preserved in memory with a clarity more potent than any spell. The castle settles into a gentle hush as dawn begins to bleed soft gold across the horizon, brushing the towers and turrets with a quiet warmth that contrasts the chill of the night you shared with Severus Snape. You walk slowly through the empty corridors, each footstep a whisper against the stone, savoring the lingering presence of a connection that needs no words, a bond that has been forged in shadows, candlelight, and the delicate rhythm of shared silence. The scent of rain-soaked stone still lingers, mingling faintly with the aroma of parchment and potions, and it carries with it the memory of proximity, of a heart revealed in fragments, and of the exquisite tension between restraint and acknowledgement. You pause at a window, watching as the first birds of morning stir in the distant trees, their tentative songs reaching softly into the castle's quiet, and you let your shoulders drop, exhaling the tension you hadn't realized you carried, allowing the calm to seep in as if it were a potion designed solely to soothe. Shadows stretch long, curling along the walls like whispered secrets, and the light filters in gradually, painting the stone in hues of amber and rose, a reminder that even the darkest nights eventually give way to illumination. The memory of his gaze, his subtle gestures, the silent conversation conducted through proximity and presence, lingers like a soft hum, grounding you, reassuring you that what is felt deeply need not always be spoken aloud to be real. As you settle into this quiet, soft awareness, the castle breathes around you, and you realize that some stories, some connections, endure not in dramatic revelations, but in the delicate, enduring spaces between moments, preserved gently in memory, heart, and the subtle magic of being seen. Now let your mind drift, soft and steady, like a feather carried on a gentle current, and rest in the comforting knowledge that even fleeting intimacy can leave a lasting, tender imprint on the soul.